ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has questioned Ace Magashule's loyalty to the party. He was speaking during the handing over of title deeds to Tafelkop Farmers Association in Groblersdal in Limpopo.
The Secretary General is suspended in terms of the NEC decisions, and he has decided to challenge that decision by taking his own organization to court, as well as a number of leaders, including myself. So we must await that process to work itself through. And as regards his refusal to abide by the decision that was taken by the NEC, that is a matter that is currently being looked at by the organization, the officials and the NWC, so that one will be processed as we process many things. We're rather careful and very correct in the way that we do things, so allow us the time, the space to be able to do these things as well as we should do them. For a Secretary General to decide to take his own organization to court and to question the constitutionality of the very constitution that he's been implementing and adhering to is a big surprise. So this is unprecedented, but we will obviously need to go through that. The matter is now sub judice, and we must let the process run its full course.
Former Gauteng Health MEC Dr Bandile Masuku has welcomed the ANC National Disciplinary Committee's ruling clearing him and suspended presidential spokesperson Khusela Diko of any wrongdoing. So this relates to the personal protective equipment corruption saga. The Disciplinary Committee ruled that Masuku and Diko can return to their political functions as Gauteng Provincial Executive Committee members. Let's bring in the ANC spokesperson now, Pule Mabe. But before we do that, let's take a listen to this clip by the ANC President.
I heard also this morning that the Disciplinary Committee has ruled in her favour. So that matter is obviously being handled at the Gauteng provincial level. So she's still on suspension, and so let's allow all that to be properly handled.
Let's bring in now the ANC spokesperson, Pule Mabe. Mr. Mabe, a very good evening to you. Thanks indeed for your time. Listening to what the ANC president said just earlier on today, saying he's surprised by the actions of the Secretary General. How far is the ANC in filing a responding affidavit on this matter?
Evening, Khusela, and evening to your viewers. The African National Congress has already placed on record that it has filed its intention to oppose the application by the Secretary General seeking to lift the suspension imposed on him by the organization in terms of 25.70 of the ANC Constitution. So that matter is being handled by our legal team. They are talking to the legal team on the other side. So everything is well in order.
How would you describe, the relationships based on the sentiment by the ANC president today? How would you describe the relationship between the suspended Secretary General and the ANC president? Because it has also been on record that the two had not yet spoken, even after the matter relating to him taking the African National Congress to court.
Well, Khusela, I'm the national spokesperson of the ANC. I'm not empowered to speak on relations between leaders. I speak about how much we go as the leadership of the African National Congress to uphold resolutions of conference, including upholding resolutions of the National Executive Committee. The President of the ANC is effectively articulating a decision of the National Executive Committee. It is not his personal decision. The decision to place the Secretary on a temporary suspension in accordance with 25.70 of the ANC Constitution is not a decision of the President. It was a decision taken by the overall collective of the National Executive Committee. So on how we ask this question, ourselves in the media should also be careful not to contribute towards sentiments that might otherwise suggest.
Mr. Mabe, I don't think we're contributing to anything.
Can I be
yes,
allowed to speak?
I asked this on the basis, Mr. Mabe, and you can respond. I'll give you enough time.
You invited me to come to this interview.
Yeah.
I mean, you had an option not to invite us. If when we speak you are going to enter, then it's not helpful. I mean, when you invite us, treat us with respect, because we don't call television stations to be invited. It's yourselves who invite us to come to interviews. When we are busy expressing ourselves, then we get cut in that way. I mean, I am effectively just interpreting what you have said. You know, you would have allowed me to speak at the end of me having spoken, then you can come and raise your own view. I was making a point that we must never create an impression that it is the President of the African National Congress that had meted the temporary suspension against the Secretary General. No, it is a decision of the National Executive Committee. And this decision is taken in accordance with 25.70 of the ANC Constitution. And you'd remember, Khusela, this effectively arose out of that 30-day period. We had said in the 30-day period coming out of the NEC of the 26th to the 29th of March, we said we'll give a 30-day period so that both appear before in a court of law for charges relating to corruption or other serious crimes will then have to step aside. If they don't step aside, when within that 30-day period, they will then be temporarily suspended in accordance with 25.70 of the ANC Constitution. We have even gone as far as outlining subsequent structures of the ANC that can do that. Where is the provincial leaders? It will be the provincial secretary who then does that. Where is in a region? It will be the regional secretary who then writes that letter. In this instance, the correspondence written by the Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress to the Secretary General at the time, advising him on the decision of the National Working Committee, was in accordance with Rule 13 of the ANC Constitution, which effectively empowers the National Working Committee to be able to intervene and take decisions on behalf of the NEC. I mean, if the NEC say implement this decision in the intervening period, the structure that must carry forward that kind of an obligation is the National Working Committee. So the Working Committee has done effectively that.
Mr. Mabe, I'd really like to come back on this issue where you seem to suggest that the media is trying to perpetuate a certain narrative. The reason why I asked that question was on the simple basis that you would know that in the past, it is well on record that after that incident, the now suspended Secretary General of the African National Congress himself had said he was going to suspend the president of the ANC. So I don't think that the media is trying to perpetuate any narrative here. It is important for us to ask those questions as the media so that you're able to respond to them. And where we think that perhaps you are misinterpreting what we're saying, we should be also be given the leeway to respond to that. But let's move on to the next question. What does this decision by mean? Because the DC appeal is in favour of the two, but you still have the SIU proceedings, which have not yet concluded yet.
Well, Khusela, I'm happy that you clarified the earlier point that you clarified. But the point that you were clarifying is not what came up in the manner in which the question was asked. You know, so if it was asked in the manner that you had just responded now, it would have just have assisted, because all of us could read from different undertones and arrive at different conclusions. Now, let me come to the question that you are now asking about the decision of the NDCA. Of course, we will get a report in the National Working Committee. Where I'm sitting now, I have also come to learn about this decision out in the media, including through a statement that Comrade Dr Bandile Masuku had issued, effectively saying that instructing us as spokespersons to be the only ones that speak on this matter. That is rather unfortunate, because we should be allowed a space to get a report. So we don't get instructed through statements written by those that will have appeared before the NDCA on how we must conduct our work. Very unfortunate. We'll raise this point with the National Working Committee. They will be able to guide us on how we need to move. Because the ANC is an organization of process. If the NDCA had labored on a matter, the NDCA will be able to clarify us, including on the conclusions that it shall have arrived at. It's a structure whose decisions we all respect. It is not for members to issue statements on the decisions taken by internal, taken by those internal organizational structures. Those internal organizational structures have got the power to communicate and enforce their own decisions. Now, immediately individual members take away that right and power from structures of organization,
Yeah.
then it creates a crisis. Now, the principle that ANC members ought to understand is that they must subject themselves to the overall discipline of the movement. The oath that they took is such that they too must place respect on structures of organization. The structures of the organization are capable to communicate their own decisions. They must be given that space.
So while those
It has never happened, by the way, Khusela.
Yeah.
It has never happened, by the way, that comrades who appear before the NDCA would, at the conclusion of the process of the NDCA, issue a statement. These are new things. These are tendencies that were already.
will you be taking them to task, Mr. Mabe?
Yeah, please?
If you're saying it's unprecedented, will you be taking them to task as the African National Congress?
I mean, it's not for me. I don't come on television platforms and say this person or that person would be taken to task. All I can do is to comment about what I see as a new culture, as the national spokesperson. When I see things that are growing as a new culture, I must say so. There are many comrades. I mean, we ourselves, when we were in the ANC Youth League, we appeared before the NDC, we appeared before the NDCA. We have never, even at that point, issued a statement whether we were in favor or not in favor of the outcomes of those structures. Many of our comrades have appeared before NDC and NDCA. Once we allow this to become a precedent, it means that those that appear before these structures must then go out and communicate before themselves. I must remind members of the African National Congress of what they said to us in 2017. They themselves agreed to a communications protocol, which effectively sets out how we must communicate in the ANC. We must not go against decisions we have taken. Members of the ANC are required to be loyal to their own decisions. And loyalty to decisions means being loyal even to the same policies that you had agreed upon, even when you don't agree, even when they are not in favor with your conduct at a certain point, you must be loyal. It's just a matter of principle, really, Khusela.
I know you said that you'll still be looking at the NDC matter, but, some could perhaps argue, does this outcome not strengthen the resolve of those in the ANC who have been saying that the ANC constitution must be in line, I guess, with the constitution of the country on the innocent until proven guilty issue?
Well, I didn't really get the first part of your question, Hilda, so can you just repeat? I'm worried that I can end up answering to a different question.
All right. I'm asking that basically, doesn't this outcome of the NDC basically speak to the narrative of some that would say that basically, does this outcome not strengthen the resolve of those in the ANC who have been saying that the ANC constitution and basically the constitution of the country should be in line on the issue of innocent until proven guilty?
Well, the ANC has never really pronounced itself on the guilt of individuals. I must remind you, Khusela, and the good viewers of the SABC, of the decisions we took at the 2015 National General Council around what we do to deal with the integrity and credibility of the African National Congress. One of the resolves we made at that point was that the ANC must be seen, both in action and in deed, to be dealing with corruption. And one of the things that the African National Congress said, under that, guided by the NDC resolution at the 2017 conference, it then said, those of our cadres expected to appear in a court of law for corruption or other serious crimes must step aside while they are still attending to their own matters. When the ANC said this, it did not necessarily pass judgment on individuals. For instance, the ANC is not saying, Pule, because you are charged of corruption, you are corrupt. The ANC says, Pule, because you are charged of corruption, we think and believe that you should step aside so that you have got enough time to deal with your issues and do not conflate the work that you are expected to do in the party while you are attending to your own issues. This is how the ANC shall have resolved on this issue. So the ANC doesn't say individuals are guilty of crimes. The ANC says, the ANC says, when you are indicted to appear in a court of law for corruption or other serious crimes, step aside. Have the sufficient time to deal with your matter without having to conflate what the party stands for out in public. And Khusela, you will know, this was because there was an overriding cry, among South Africans. When we were campaigning and all of that, the question of corruption was always coming up in our own manifesto. We had pronounced ourselves as saying we are going to decisively deal with corruption.
Right.
Now, part of the renewal and the unity that the African National Congress speaks about has got to be expressed and displayed on how it deals with these misnomers that society is really making noise about. One of those being corruption.
Mr. Mabe, thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us on the programme. ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe.